The night was quiet inside the Royal Academy of Valoria, a massive alien city that shimmered like silver glass under the twin moons. The corridors were empty. Only the soft hum of cleaning drones could be heard. And in the middle of that silence walked a tired human janitor named Ethan Cole. He was a single dad from Earth, a man who had lost everything in the human-Valorian War years ago. The war had ended, but peace had not been easy. Humans were now workers, cleaners, and servants in alien cities. Ethan had taken this job to earn enough money to support his son, who lived in a small colony far away, every night. When the alien students left the grand classrooms, Ethan quietly swept the marble floors and picked up the glowing dust left behind by their devices. But that night something unusual happened. As he was mopping near the royal wing, he heard a whisper. It was soft, trembling, almost like the sound of a child afraid to speak human. "Please wait," the voice said. Ethan froze. He turned around and saw a young alien girl standing near the door. Her skin shimmered pale blue under the moonlight, and her bright silver eyes looked scared but curious. She wore a long robe marked with the royal emblem, the symbol of the Queen's own bloodline. Ethan immediately bowed his head. "Your Highness," he said quietly. He had seen her before during ceremonies. Princess Lyra, the daughter of the alien queen. She was known to be shy and quiet, always surrounded by guards and tutors. "Please don't tell anyone I'm here," she whispered, walking closer. "I saw you cleaning yesterday, and I heard you speaking your language. I want to learn it." Ethan blinked. "You mean English?" he asked. She nodded eagerly. "Yes, the tongue of humans. They say it's forbidden for us to learn it, but I want to understand what you say when you smile. You look peaceful when you speak." Ethan looked around nervously. There were security drones everywhere, and the Queen's guards were known to punish even small disobedience. Teaching a royal child was not just against the rules, it was dangerous. "Princess, if anyone sees me with you, I'll be—" "Please," she interrupted, her silver eyes filling with tears. "No one talks to me. They all fear my mother. I just want to learn." Just a few words. Ethan looked at her, and for a moment he saw not a princess, but his daughter. His little girl who once begged him to read her bedtime stories before she died in the war. His heart softened. He sighed and whispered, "All right," but only for a few minutes. Lyra's eyes brightened like starlight. She ran to sit on a desk, folding her hands like a proper student. Ethan picked up a piece of white chalk and wrote on the board, "Hello." "This means a greeting," he said softly. "You say it when you meet someone." "It's friendly." Lyra tried to copy him. "Hello," she said slowly, her tongue stumbling over the sound. Ethan smiled. "Perfect," he said. "That's very good," she giggled, her laughter echoing gently in the room. It was the first time Ethan had ever heard an alien child laugh like that. It was light, almost human. They continued word after word. Ethan taught her hope. "Thank you, and friend." She listened carefully, repeating each word with deep focus, and sometimes she asked, "Why does this word sound so warm?" Ethan answered, "Because it's spoken with heart, not just tongue." Minutes turned into hours. The classroom glowed softly with moonlight. For the first time in years, Ethan forgot he was a janitor, and she forgot she was a princess. They were just teacher and student, human and alien, two lonely souls sharing warmth across the line that divided their worlds. When the last word was spoken, Ethan looked at the clock and gasped, "You must go, princess." If the guards, but before he could finish, a faint red light blinked near the ceiling. Unknown to them, a small surveillance orb floated silently in the corner. Recording everything, Lyra stood and whispered, "Thank you, teacher." Then she took a piece of paper and wrote her own version of "hello," a crooked word with shaky letters. She handed it to him. "Keep this so you don't forget me." Ethan smiled, his heart heavy and warm at the same time. "I won't forget," he said softly. As the princess slipped away into the shadows, Ethan stood alone in the silent room, holding the paper like a treasure. He didn't know that by morning, that single act of kindness, teaching a forbidden word, would shake the entire palace. And high above in the royal tower, the Queen's surveillance orb sent its recording directly to her private chamber. The Queen watched the footage in silence, her eyes narrowing. "A human," she whispered coldly, "teaching my daughter." The night that began with a lesson in kindness would soon turn into a storm that no one could stop. The next night came with heavy clouds and a strange feeling in the air. The Royal Academy was quieter than usual, the halls dimly lit by floating orbs. Ethan Cole pushed his mop cart slowly through the corridor, his thoughts restless. He couldn't stop thinking about the young alien princess, Lyra, the one who had called him teacher. He had promised himself he would stay away. It was too dangerous. If anyone found out he was teaching her human language, his life would be over. But as he reached the classroom, he saw a small, glowing note placed under the door, written in crooked letters. "Please, teacher, one more word." Lyra, Ethan's heart softened again. He looked around carefully, then stepped inside the classroom. It was dark, except for a single moonbeam shining across the board. A moment later, Lyra appeared from behind the curtains, her face hidden by the hood of her royal robe. "You came back," she whispered, smiling shyly. "And you shouldn't have," Ethan replied quietly. "If the guards find us, we'll both be in trouble." She shook her head. "They never check here at night. They think I'm asleep. Please, just one more lesson. Please." Her voice trembled with excitement and innocence, and Ethan couldn't refuse. He sighed and nodded. "All right, one more." He picked up the chalk again and wrote on the board. "Family." Lyra tilted her head. "What does it mean?" Ethan smiled faintly. "It means the people you love, the ones you protect even if you're not the same." She repeated it slowly. "Family." The sound of it made her giggle. "It feels warm," she said softly. Then she looked at him curiously. "Do you have a family, teacher?" Ethan hesitated. The question hit deep. "I did," he said quietly. "I had a daughter once. She loved to learn new words too. Her favorite was dream." His voice cracked slightly, and Lyra noticed she didn't understand human sadness, but she felt it in his tone. "I'm sorry," she whispered, reaching out her small glowing hand toward him. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "You didn't," he said gently. "You reminded me of her." For a few moments there was silence. Only the soft hum of alien lights filled the air. Lyra looked at him carefully, then asked, "Is that why you teach me? Because I remind you of her?" Ethan smiled sadly. "Maybe. Or maybe it's because every child deserves someone who believes in them." Those words stayed with her, deeper than any lesson. In the palace, no one ever said such things. Her mother, the queen, taught strength and fear, not kindness, but here in the quiet classroom, Lyra felt something new, hope as the days passed. They continued to meet in secret, sometimes late at night. Sometimes during short breaks, Ethan taught her words like light. "Dream, kindness, and brave," Lyra repeated them eagerly, sometimes writing them on the walls in human letters. Each new word felt like a treasure, something forbidden yet beautiful. She began to bring him small gifts, alien fruit, a silver pen, once even a small glowing gem. "For you, teacher," she'd say shyly. Ethan always refused politely. "I don't need gifts, Lyra. Just promise me you'll use the words for good." She nodded each time, her smile innocent. "I will, I promise." But the academy was not as blind as they thought. Whispers began to spread among the staff. Someone had seen the royal princess sneaking into the classrooms at night. Another had heard faint human words echoing through the walls. Rumors reached the queen's spies, who began to investigate quietly. One evening, as Ethan finished sweeping the hallway, a tall alien soldier stopped him. The guard's eyes glowed red through his helmet. "Human, report to the main office tomorrow." "You are being reviewed," Ethan froze. "Reviewed for what?" The guard gave no answer and walked away. That night, Ethan sat in his small dorm. Staring at the photo of his late daughter, he whispered, "I just wanted to help her." Nothing more. He didn't know if tomorrow would bring punishment or worse, but he decided that if this was his last night, he would not hide. At midnight, he returned to the classroom one last time. Hoping to tell Lyra goodbye, she was already there, waiting for him, her eyes full of worry. "The guards are asking questions," she said quickly. "They think you are teaching me forbidden things." Ethan nodded. "It's my fault. I should have said no from the start." "No," she cried. "It's not wrong to learn. You taught me to speak, to smile, to feel brave." Her voice broke. "I don't want to lose my teacher." Ethan placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Listen, Lyra, you have to stop coming here. Promise me." Tears rolled down her glowing cheeks. "But I don't want to forget you." "You won't," he said softly. "Every word you learned will always stay inside you even when I'm gone." She nodded slowly, holding back tears, then she whispered, "Goodbye." "Teacher?" and ran out into the shadows. Ethan stood alone again in the quiet room, his heart heavy. He didn't see the small floating orb hovering near the ceiling, the same one that had recorded their first lesson. This time it followed her back to the palace, carrying every word they said in the royal tower. The queen sat before a glowing screen, watching the footage in silence, her expression unreadable. But as she saw her daughter cry in the human's arms, something strange flickered in her cold eyes, not anger, not yet, curiosity. She leaned forward and whispered to herself, "So this human teaches not words but hearts," and for the first time in her rule, the queen decided to see for herself who this human really was. The royal palace of Valoria stood high above the clouds, its crystal towers piercing the blue night sky like blades of light. Inside, behind walls of gold and silver, the alien queen Sarathia sat upon her throne, silent and still. Her sharp eyes watched the moving images floating before her, the hidden recordings from the Royal Academy. The footage showed her daughter, Princess Lyra, sitting beside a human janitor, her laughter soft, her words in strange human sounds. The queen's jaw tightened as the man wrote glowing symbols on the board. English letters, words from a race once considered primitive. "A human teaching my blood," she whispered, her voice cold as ice. For centuries, the Valorians had ruled the stars with discipline and power. To them, emotions were weakness, and humans were seen as chaotic beings, full of uncontrollable feelings. That was why they were kept as workers, never equals. Never teachers, yet in the image before her, Lyra was laughing, smiling, and repeating strange words like family and dream, words that had no meaning in Valorian courts. The queen clenched her hand into a fist. "Find this human," she commanded to her guards. "Find him and bring him to me." Meanwhile, in the academy, Ethan continued his quiet duties, unaware that the queen herself had taken notice. The guards were acting differently now, watching him longer than usual, whispering among themselves. Even the other humans avoided him. Afraid that being seen with him might draw trouble, Ethan tried to focus on his work, sweeping the marble halls and polishing the glowing walls. But his thoughts kept drifting to Lyra. He hadn't seen her since their last meeting, and each night he wondered if she was safe. That evening, as he emptied a trash bin near the royal wing, he heard a familiar soft voice. "Teacher," Lyra whispered from behind the column, "I missed you." Ethan turned quickly, shocked to see her there without guards. "Lyra, you shouldn't be here," he said firmly. "If anyone sees you, they won't," she said, stepping closer. "I told my mother I was studying, but I wanted to see you." She looked older somehow, her eyes glowing brighter. "Mother has been asking strange questions lately," she continued. "She asks who taught me to smile, who taught me human words." Ethan froze. "You told her?" Lyra shook her head quickly. "No, I said I learned it from old books. But she doesn't believe me." Ethan took a deep breath, his pulse quickening. "Lyra, listen to me. We can't meet anymore. It's too dangerous now." Her lips trembled. "You said every child deserves to learn." "They do," he said gently. "But sometimes the world doesn't allow it." "Not yet." She lowered her head, whispering, "Then I'll make it allow it someday." Before Ethan could reply, the sound of metallic footsteps echoed down the hallway. Guards were approaching, their heavy boots thudding in rhythm. Ethan pushed her toward a side door. "Go, quickly," he whispered. "Hide." Lyra slipped away just as the guards turned the corner. Their red visors glowed in the dark. "Human," one barked, "you are to report to the royal palace at dawn." Ethan tried to act calm. "What for?" The alien only replied coldly, "You will find out." When they left, Ethan leaned against the wall, feeling the weight of fear press on his chest. He knew the queen had found out and there was no escape now. At dawn, Ethan was escorted through the palace gates. The corridors shimmered with alien energy, and the air smelled of ozone and perfume. Every servant bowed as the queen's guards passed, whispering about the human who had done the unthinkable, taught the royal air. Finally, the doors of the throne room opened. The hall stretched endlessly, lined with glowing banners and alien symbols of victory. At the far end sat Queen Sarathia, her presence commanding, her silver crown glowing faintly. Ethan bowed deeply, trying to stay calm. The queen's voice was smooth but sharp. "So, you are the human who dared to speak forbidden words to my daughter." Ethan didn't answer right away. He looked up at her, not with fear but with quiet honesty. "I didn't mean to offend your majesty, I was only trying to help her understand kindness. The Queen's eyes narrowed. Kindness? Humans speak of kindness while they destroy their own worlds. Ethan held her gaze. Maybe, but not all of us. Some of us still believe words can heal more than weapons. A murmur spread through the alien court. No one had ever spoken to the Queen like that, especially a human. She stood slowly, her long gown trailing across the floor like liquid silver. You are bold, human, perhaps foolishly so, she said coldly. Tell me, what did you teach her? Hope, he said simply. And the meaning of being brave. The Queen's expression flickered, just for a moment before she hid it behind her usual calm. Hope is for the weak, she said, turning away. Then why is your daughter happier than ever before? Ethan asked softly. The Queen stopped, her hands tightening on the railing of her throne. For the first time, someone had spoken to her heart, not her crown. She turned sharply. Take him away, she ordered, her voice trembling slightly. I will decide his punishment at sunset. As the guards dragged him out, Ethan looked back once, their eyes met, and for the briefest second, the Queen saw something she hadn't seen in years. Courage without fear. When the throne room emptied, the Queen stood alone, staring at the words replaying on her hologram. The human's voice echoed again. Every child deserves to learn. For the first time in her reign, Queen Sarathia felt something unfamiliar stir inside her. A question, a feeling she had buried long ago, and it whispered softly in her mind. What if he's right? The grand throne hall of Valoria shimmered like a sea of crystal. Thousands of alien nobles gathered inside, their silver robes reflecting the light from hovering energy orbs. The air was thick with tension. Every voice fell silent when the Queen entered, her long cloak flowing behind her like liquid starlight. At the center of the hall, surrounded by guards, stood Ethan Cole, the human janitor. His uniform was torn, his face calm but pale, even with so many alien eyes staring at him with disgust and curiosity. He didn't bow in fear, he simply stood there, hands bound, his eyes fixed on the Queen. Whispers filled the chamber. That's the human who taught the princess. They say he made her laugh. Disgraceful, teaching emotions to royalty. The Queen raised her hand, and silence fell. Her voice was sharp and cold, echoing across the hall. Ethan Cole of Earth. You have broken the sacred law of Valoria, she said. You taught forbidden knowledge to the royal bloodline. You dared to place your tongue, your words above ours. Do you deny it? Ethan's voice was steady. No, Your Majesty, I do not deny it. A gasp rippled through the crowd. No one had expected him to speak so calmly. Then you admit guilt? She demanded. I admit I taught her, he replied softly, but not poison, not lies. I taught her words that heal, words that bring light. The Queen's eyes narrowed. Light? You call your primitive emotions light? Ethan met her gaze. Yes, because I have seen darkness and it looks a lot like fear, even your people. Your daughter live in it. The nobles erupted in anger, shouting in alien tongues. Silence him. He insults the throne. Execute him. But the Queen raised her hand again, and they all stopped. Her eyes never left Ethan's. You speak boldly for someone who cleans our floors, she said coldly. I clean your halls because I have to, Ethan said quietly. But I speak because I must. Your daughter deserves to learn not just science and law, but compassion, mercy, love, things your empire has forgotten. The Queen's lips tightened. You dare lecture me on love? Ethan nodded slowly. Because I've lost it, I lost my wife, my daughter, my world, and still I choose to teach instead of hate. Can you say the same? The entire court went silent. Even the guards shifted uneasily. The Queen's golden eyes flickered with something unreadable, something human. Princess Lyra, who had been forced to stand beside her mother, suddenly stepped forward, her small voice echoed. Trembling but brave, mother, he's not lying, she said. He didn't teach me rebellion. He taught me words that made me feel alive.
He taught me to dream, Lyra.
The Queen snapped, her voice cracking like thunder. You will be silent. Tears filled the girl's glowing eyes. Please, mother, don't hurt him, he's my friend. That single word, friend, hung in the air like lightning. The crowd gasped, and even the Queen froze. No one in all her years of rule had ever dared to call a human a friend. For a long moment, the Queen said nothing. Her mind was a storm of thoughts, rage, confusion, something deeper she didn't want to name. Her heart ached in a way it hadn't since her own youth. Before the wars turned her cold, Finally, she rose from her throne and said, "You claim to have taught her light, then show me, human. Teach me something. Teach me this light before I pass my judgment." The hall went utterly silent. Everyone looked at Ethan, wondering if this was mercy or mockery. Ethan bowed slightly. "Very well, Your Majesty," he said softly. "Tonight I'll teach you one word. The same one I taught your daughter first. It's simple, but powerful." He took a piece of chalk from his pocket, the same one he had kept hidden since the night of his first lesson. Kneeling, he wrote one word on the shining floor of the hall: hope. Then he looked up and said, "This word means to believe in something good, even when everything tells you it's impossible. It's the fire that keeps us alive when the world turns against us," the nobles whispered. Confused, amused, some even laughed softly. But the queen said nothing. Her gaze was locked on the glowing word at her feet. "Hope," she whispered, tasting the sound. It felt strange in her mouth, heavy with meaning she had never known. Ethan continued, "You rule 1,000 worlds, yet your people fear you more than they love you. Maybe it's time to show them something greater than fear." The queen stepped closer, her long shadow falling across him for a second. Her face softened, but then she spoke. "Enough." Her voice echoed through the hall. "You will remain imprisoned until I decide your fate." She turned away, her expression unreadable. "Take him away." As the guards led Ethan out, he looked back at the queen one last time and said quietly, "I'll wait, Your Majesty, because even you will understand that word one day." The queen didn't reply, but her hands trembled slightly, and her eyes lingered on the glowing word that refused to fade from the floor. That night, long after the court had emptied, Queen Sarathia walked alone into the hall. The word hope still shimmered faintly on the floor like living light. She stood over it, whispering to herself, "What have you done to me, human?" For the first time in her immortal reign, she couldn't sleep. The word echoed in her mind again and again, soft, dangerous human hope. The next morning, the palace woke to whispers. The queen had delayed the human's execution, and no one knew why. Valoria's nobles filled the golden halls, debating in low voices. Has she gone soft? Or is it another test? Humans are not worth a queen's thought, they said. But Queen Sarathia sat in silence on her throne. Her mind replayed the human's words from the night before. Maybe it's time to show them something greater than fear. They echoed in her head like music she couldn't silence. Finally, she stood and commanded, "Bring the human to me alone." The guards obeyed, and soon Ethan Cole stood before her again, his wrists still bound but his expression calm. The grand chamber was empty except for the two of them. The queen's crown glimmered faintly as she studied him. "You have disturbed my sleep, human," she said coldly. "No one has done that in centuries." Ethan gave a small smile. "Then maybe you needed to be disturbed, Your Majesty." Her golden eyes narrowed. "You risk death with every word you speak, and yet you do not fear it. Why?" "Because," he said softly, "fear builds walls, hope builds bridges. I've seen too many walls." The queen was silent for a moment. Then she said, "You spoke of mercy before. Teach me what it means." Ethan blinked, surprised. "You want me to teach you?" "Yes," she said firmly. "If mercy truly has strength, show me. If not, I will erase it from my empire forever." For the next 7 days, Ethan was kept in the palace, not as a prisoner in chains, but as a subject under watch. The queen herself ordered that he be brought to her private chamber each morning. There, surrounded by floating crystals and glowing curtains of starlight, she would stand before him like a student pretending not to be one. Ethan began simply, "Mercy means to forgive when you have the power to destroy," he explained. The queen frowned. "That sounds like weakness." He shook his head. "It's harder than killing. It takes strength to stop when your heart burns for revenge." She paced slowly, her long gown brushing the floor. Valoria was built on strength, on fear. "If we show mercy, others will see it as a crack." "Maybe," Ethan said. "But even stars have cracks. That's how the light gets out." The queen looked away quickly, unwilling to let him see the strange warmth rising inside her. On the 3rd day, he told her about his daughter. "She was sick," he said quietly, "and I had no money for medicine. When the alien war took her from me, I thought I'd never forgive, but one day, I realized hate doesn't bring back love, mercy does. Mercy keeps her alive in me." The queen listened in silence, her eyes softening just slightly. "You forgive those who killed your child?" "I learned to," he said, "because mercy doesn't free them, it frees me." That night, Queen Sarathia stood on her balcony. Looking down at her city for the first time, she noticed the fear in the eyes of her people. They didn't look at her with love, only obedience. Was this truly strength or loneliness disguised as power? On the 6th day, a messenger from the outer colonies arrived with grave news. Pirates had attacked a Valorian outpost. The soldiers captured the leader and brought him before the queen. The court gathered to watch. Expecting execution, the queen stood tall, her blade shimmering. "You dared attack my empire," she said coldly. The pirate fell to his knees, trembling. "Mercy, my queen," he begged. The court waited for the sound of her command, but something in her paused. Ethan's words whispered in her mind. "It takes strength to stop when your heart burns for revenge." The queen slowly lowered her blade, her voice calm. "Imprison him, not kill him." Gasps filled the room. The nobles were stunned, "Your Majesty." She turned to them, her eyes glowing bright. "Today, Valoria will learn that mercy is not weakness, it is control." That single act sent ripples through the empire. Some called it madness, others whispered it was wisdom reborn. That evening, the queen summoned Ethan once more. He entered the chamber quietly, unaware of what had happened. "You told me mercy was power," she said softly. "I tested it, and it changed everything." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then you've passed the test." "Your Majesty," the queen looked at him for a long time, her voice low and sincere. "No, human. It is I who have been your student." She stepped closer, her tone quieter now, almost human. "Tell me, Ethan Cole, why did you risk your life to teach a child not your own?" He met her gaze, because every child, no matter their world, deserves a future built on kindness, not fear. For a moment, the queen's hand trembled. She wanted to say something, to thank him, but the word felt foreign. Finally, she said softly, "Tomorrow, you will be released." Ethan's eyes widened. "Released?" "Yes," she said, "but remember this, human, Valoria does not forget those who change it." As he bowed to leave, the queen whispered one last thing under her breath, so soft no one else could hear. "Thank you, teacher." That night, the queen sat alone, looking at the word Ethan had written days ago, hope, glowing faintly on her wall, and for the first time in her long, cold life, she smiled. Valoria was no longer the same. The air that once carried fear now held whispers of confusion and wonder. The citizens could not understand it. Why their powerful queen, once known as the Steel Star, had spared a pirate's life, or why she no longer ordered executions in the square. The guards no longer carried their weapons high. The servants spoke a little louder, and for the first time in generations, laughter was heard in the palace gardens. Queen Sarathia stood on her balcony overlooking the endless city of glass spires and floating bridges. The twin suns rose slowly, painting her world gold and violet. Yet what shone brighter than the sunrise was something new in her eyes, a gentleness that had never been there before. Ethan's words still echoed in her thoughts. "Hope builds bridges." She repeated it quietly to herself as if testing its weight. It sounded strange on her tongue, but true. Behind her, a soft voice interrupted. "Mother?" It was Princess Lyra, her silver eyes calm yet glowing with curiosity. She bowed slightly, a habit taught by the court, but the queen raised a hand. "Do not bow to me, my daughter," Sarathia said softly. "Not here." Lyra blinked in surprise. "But you're the queen." Sarathia turned toward her, a faint smile on her lips. "And you're the reason I still am." Lyra's heart lifted at those words. "Did you speak to Teacher Ethan again?" she asked carefully. The queen hesitated. "He has been released," she said slowly. "He returned to his work at the academy." Lyra's smile grew bright. "Then he's safe?" "Yes," the queen replied, watching her daughter's joy. "Safer than most humans have ever been under my rule." For the first time, Lyra took her mother's hand. "He taught me more than words," she whispered. "He taught me to feel." Sarathia closed her eyes briefly. Feel. That word had been her greatest weakness once, but now, it felt like her greatest power. A week later, Sarathia walked through the Royal Academy, something she had never done before. The students and teachers bowed deeply, frightened by her presence, but she ignored them. She was looking for someone. In a quiet corridor, she found him, Ethan Cole, sweeping the floor just as he had always done. When he noticed her reflection in the polished glass, he froze, his heart skipping. Slowly, he turned and bowed his head. "Your Majesty," he said softly. The Queen's expression was unreadable, but her tone was calm. "You are not afraid of me anymore." He smiled faintly. "Should I be?" "Perhaps," she replied, though her lips curved slightly. "But I am not here to punish. I am here to listen." Ethan blinked. "Listen?" "Yes," she said. "My people obey, but they do not speak. They live, but they do not dream. I wish to change that. But I do not know how." He put down his broom and looked her in the eyes. "Then start small," he said gently. "Talk to them, not at them. You can't rule hearts with fear forever." The Queen looked down thoughtfully. "Fear has kept my world safe. And hope will keep it alive," Ethan said quietly. Her gaze softened. "You speak as though you believe in me." "I do," he said, "because your daughter does." For a moment, silence filled the corridor. The Queen studied him. This fragile human with tired eyes and rough hands, and realized something extraordinary. He had nothing, yet he still gave everything. "Very well," she said at last. "Then help me teach my people as you taught her." Ethan blinked. "You want me to teach?" She nodded. "Not as a servant, but as a guide. Teach the young. Teach them your words." He hesitated, his voice shaking slightly. "That could change everything." "That," she said softly, "is exactly the point." Weeks turned into months. The academy began to change. Humans were allowed to walk freely without guards. Lyra often joined Ethan in his new class, where alien and human children sat side by side, learning simple words: hope, dream, thank you. When the Queen visited, she would watch quietly from the doorway. She never interrupted, but her presence filled the room with awe. And sometimes when no one was looking, she smiled. The nobles called her mad. The generals warned her that kindness would weaken the empire. But when they spoke against her, she simply said, "Then let mercy be my weapon." And one night, as she walked alone in the empty throne hall, she saw something she had never seen before: fresh flowers placed at the foot of her throne. No order, no demand, just a silent gift from her people. For the first time, the Queen felt what power truly was: not command, not fear, but connection. Later that night, she called for Lyra. Together they looked up at the stars, where the old banners of conquest once flew. The Queen whispered, "Your teacher was right. Hope is not a weakness. It is the beginning of everything." Lyra leaned against her, smiling. "Will he come back tomorrow?" The Queen nodded slowly. "Yes, but this time he will not be your teacher." She looked out toward the shining city, her voice soft, almost human. "He will be ours." And under the twin moons of Valoria, the Queen who once ruled with fear began to rule with something far stronger: heart. The morning sky over Valoria glowed with ribbons of gold and violet. The twin suns rose higher, shining upon a city that no longer feared its queen. The grand banners that once symbolized conquest now fluttered with a new emblem: a single glowing circle surrounded by light, the human word hope written beneath in 2 languages. Ethan Cole stood quietly outside the Royal Academy, watching alien and human children walk side by side through its glass gates. Some bowed respectfully to him. Others smiled and said, "Good morning," in rough but cheerful English. He smiled back, heart full. He had seen a miracle happen, not through power but through words. A messenger approached him quickly, bowing low. "The Queen requests your presence in the throne hall." "Teacher Ethan?" He nodded, wiping his hands on his work uniform. "Of course," he said softly, not realizing that today would be the last day he'd ever wear it. The throne hall shimmered brighter than ever before. Instead of rows of cold soldiers, there stood citizens, humans and aliens alike, waiting in silence. At the far end, Queen Sarathia sat upon her throne, but her crown was lighter now, her face gentler. The fire in her eyes had not gone out. It had simply changed. When Ethan entered, the hall fell silent. He bowed low. "Your Majesty," he said softly. But the Queen rose from her throne, something that had never happened for any subject before. "Ethan Cole of Earth," she said, her voice carrying across the chamber. "Do you know why I have called you here?" He looked up carefully. "No, Your Majesty." She stepped closer, her long gown trailing behind her like flowing silver mist. "When you first came to Valoria, you were a janitor, a man who cleaned our floors, unseen and unheard, yet your hands have rebuilt more than walls." "They rebuilt hearts," Ethan said nothing. Too stunned to speak, the Queen continued. "When I met you, I believed mercy was weakness and hope was an illusion. But you have proven both to be stronger than fear. For that, I owe you a debt that no crown can measure. She turned toward the gathered crowd, her voice ringing like a bell through the vast hall. From this day forth, the walls between human and Valorian shall fall. Humans shall no longer serve as slaves or workers, but as equals, builders, and teachers. The entire hall erupted into murmurs of shock and disbelief. Some nobles protested loudly. This cannot be. Humans are too emotional, too. But the Queen's hand silenced them with one sharp motion. Then perhaps emotion is what we've been missing, she said coldly. Because it took one man's heart to remind me what true strength is. Her golden eyes turned back to Ethan. You taught my daughter, my people, and me, but your lessons are not yet finished. She paused, then raised her hand. A soft light surrounded him, forming a symbol on his chest, the royal seal of Valoria, glowing in human blue. From this moment, she said, you are no longer Ethan Cole the janitor, but Ethan Cole, royal teacher of Valoria, guardian of words and hearts. Gasps filled the air. No human had ever been given a title before. Ethan looked stunned. Your Majesty, I don't deserve. She stepped closer and placed a hand on his shoulder. You do more than any of us, she said quietly. You gave what we forgot, compassion. Princess Lyra ran forward. Tears glimmering in her eyes, she hugged him tightly, whispering, you'll never be alone again. Teacher, the hall applauded, slow at first, then louder, until the sound became a living heartbeat echoing through the crystal walls. That night, as stars lit the alien sky, Ethan stood once more on the Queen's balcony beside her and Lyra. The city below glowed like a sea of light, where human and alien lanterns mixed as one. Do you regret sparing me? Ethan asked softly. The Queen looked at him, her eyes reflecting the stars. Regret? She said, smiling faintly. No, human. You gave me something I never had, a reason to rule not just by law but by love. Lyra pointed to the horizon, where ships were taking off toward other worlds, carrying teachers, translators, and healers. They're spreading the new program, she said proudly. Human lessons for every world? Ethan smiled warmly. Then maybe your galaxy will know what mine forgot. The Queen turned toward him one last time, her voice soft as the wind. You once said hope builds bridges. Ethan Cole, you didn't just build one, you built an empire of them. He bowed his head humbly. No, Your Majesty, we built it together. The Queen reached into her robe and handed him something wrapped in silver cloth. Your gift, she said, from a queen to a teacher. Inside was a crystal sphere. Glowing faintly blue, it contained the first English word Lyra had ever written. Hello? Ethan stared at it, eyes wet with quiet pride. The Queen smiled gently. Every new world begins with a greeting. As the three of them stood beneath the twin moons, the winds carried the voices of children across the city, human and alien, laughing together, repeating the word that started it all, hope. And in that moment, the galaxy that once lived in fear began to speak a new language, the language of humanity.